Happens. There is a very specific kind of person in this world. To everyone else, they seem gentle, patient, and easy to love. They are the one who always replies when someone needs help. Happens. They are the one who says, it's okay, even when someone has disappointed them. They stay calm when others make mistakes. They listen when people are falling apart. They forgive quickly. Happens. Comfort deeply, and somehow always find enough kindness to give to everyone around them. But what most people never see is what happens when they are alone, when the room gets quiet. Happens. When there is no one left to comfort, no one left to help, no one left to smile for, their kindness disappears. Not because they are fake, but because they never learned how to turn that kindness inward. Happens. The same person who would never call a friend useless can look at themselves in the mirror and think, you are not good enough. The same person who would tell someone else, everyone makes mistakes. Happens. Can replay one tiny failure in their own head for hours. The same person who gives others endless chances often gives themselves none. And this is the painful contradiction. They have compassion for the whole world. Happens. But almost no mercy for themselves. If a friend forgets something important, they understand. If a coworker messes up, they try to help. If someone they love is tired, emotional, happens, or imperfect, they make space for that person to be human. But when they are the one who is tired, when they are the one who fails, when they are the one who cannot hold everything together, happens, their inner voice becomes cruel. It does not say you are overwhelmed. It says you are weak. It does not say you made a mistake. It says you always ruin everything. The strange thing is, happens, they often do not even realize how violent their self-talk has become. Because to them, it feels normal. It feels responsible. It feels like being hard on themselves is the only way to stay good. Happens. Useful and accepted. Somewhere along the way, they learned that other people deserve patience, but they must earn it. Other people deserve forgiveness, but they must prove they are worthy of it. Happens. Other people are allowed to be human, but they are supposed to be perfect. So they become emotionally generous in public and emotionally brutal in private. They become the safe place for everyone else. Happens. While having no safe place inside themselves, they can recognize pain in another person as face, but ignore the pain in their own chest. They can speak with warmth to a stranger. Happens, but speak with contempt to their own reflection. And over time, this creates exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fully fix, because the deepest tiredness does not come from helping people. Happens. It comes from living with an inner voice that never lets you rest. The truth is, being kind to others while being cruel to yourself is not true kindness. It is an unfinished form of kindness. Happens. Real compassion is not supposed to stop at the edge of your own body. If your heart has room for everyone else's mistakes, fears, and weaknesses, then logically, it must have room for yours too. Happens. You do not need to become selfish to stop hating yourself. You do not need to care less about people. You only need to stop excluding yourself from the same humanity you so easily give to others. Happens. The next time your inner voice attacks you, pause and ask one simple question. Would I say this to someone I love? If the answer is no, then maybe the problem is not that you are too weak. Happens. Maybe the problem is that you have been using a standard on yourself that you would never dare use on another human being. And maybe healing begins the moment you finally realize this. You are also someone who deserves your kindness. Happens. But the moment you try to be kinder to yourself, something inside you may resist. A quiet voice may say, but what if I really am the problem? What if all these negative thoughts are true? Happens. And that is where we need to understand something important. Self-hatred does not always appear because you are seeing yourself clearly. Very often it appears because your brain is not designed to be fair. Happens. It is designed to keep you alive. The human brain has something psychologists often describe as a negativity bias. That means your mind naturally pays more attention to what is wrong. Happens. Dangerous, painful, or threatening than to what is safe, good, or comforting. One small criticism can echo louder than 10 compliments. One awkward conversation can stay in your head longer than a whole day of being kind. Happens. Helpful and responsible. One mistake can feel more real than all the things you did right. This does not happen because you are weak. It happens because your brain learned, through evolution, happens, that danger matters more urgently than pleasure. For our ancestors, missing something good was not always fatal. If they walked past a tree full of fruit and did not notice it, happens, they might be hungry for a while. But if they ignored a strange sound in the bushes and it turned out to be a predator, they might not survive, so the brain became highly sensitive to threat. Happens. It learned to scan for danger, remember danger, and react strongly to danger. That ancient survival system is still running inside us today, even when the danger is no longer a predator in the forest. Happens. Now, danger can feel like a cold text message, a disappointed look, a mistake at work, a joke that did not land, or a comment online from someone who does not even know you. Your brain may treat these moments as proof that you are unsafe. Happens. Unwanted or not good enough. And once the brain marks something as threatening, it does not let go easily. This is why a single negative comment can follow you for years, while a sincere compliment may disappear from your memory in minutes. Happens. Someone can tell you you did a great job and your brain may barely register it, but if someone says you should have done better, that sentence can replay over and over like an alarm that refuses to turn off. Happens. The painful part is that after enough repetition, you may stop seeing it as an alarm, you may start seeing it as truth, and this is how self-hatred quietly becomes convincing. Happens. It takes one failure and calls it your identity. It takes one rejection and calls it your destiny. It takes one embarrassing moment and uses it as evidence that you are fundamentally broken. Happens. But a mistake is not a personality. A bad day is not a life sentence. A moment of weakness is not proof that you are worthless. It is only your brain zooming in on pain because pain once helped humans survive. Happens. So when your inner voice says, you always ruin everything, pause before you believe it. Ask yourself, is this really the full truth? Or is my brain only showing me the most painful part of the picture? Happens. Because if your mind is trained to magnify the negative, then your self-image may not be accurate. It may be edited by fear. It may be filtered through old pain. It may be missing all the evidence of your effort. Happens. Your growth, your kindness, and your resilience. You are not required to believe every thought that appears in your head. Some thoughts are not wisdom. Some thoughts are survival alarms. Happens. Some thoughts are old fear wearing the costume of truth, and the first step out of self-hatred is not forcing yourself to feel confident overnight. It is simply learning to question the cruelty inside your own mind. Happens because maybe you are not as terrible as your brain says you are. Maybe your brain is just very good at remembering pain, and maybe healing begins when you stop treating every negative thought as a fact. Happens, and start seeing it for what it often is, a frightened brain trying too hard to protect you. Happens. And once you understand that your brain is naturally biased toward pain, the next question becomes even deeper. Where did that pain learn your name? Because negativity bias may explain why your mind remembers criticism. Happens. But it does not fully explain why the criticism feels so personal. It does not explain why one small mistake can make you feel unlovable. Happens. It does not explain why disappointing someone can feel less like an event and more like proof that something is wrong with who you are. For many people, that belief did not begin in adulthood. Happens. It began much earlier, in the places where they first learned what love was supposed to feel like. A child is not born believing they must be perfect to deserve affection. A child does not naturally think. Happens. I need to be useful, quiet, successful, and easy to handle before I am worthy of love. That kind of belief is learned, and often it is learned in small moments that adults may not even remember. Happens. But the child's nervous system never forgets. Maybe the child brings home a good grade hoping to be seen, and the first response is not warmth, but correction. Why wasn't it higher? Happens. Maybe they cry because they are tired, and instead of comfort, they are told they are being dramatic. Maybe they express anger, fear, or frustration, and the room suddenly turns cold. Happens. Maybe they are praised only when they are polite, helpful, high-achieving, quiet, or convenient. And slowly the child starts connecting the dots. When I perform well, I am accepted. Happens. When I make people happy, I am safe. When I cause no trouble, I am easier to love. But when I fail, feel too much, need too much, or disappoint someone, love becomes uncertain. Happens. This is what conditional love does to a developing mind. It teaches the child that affection is not something stable. It is something that can be gained or lost depending on behavior. Happens. So the child does not simply learn to do better. They learn to monitor themselves. They learn to scan every room. They learn to ask, am I being good enough right now? Am I making anyone uncomfortable? Happens. Am I becoming too much? And because a child cannot fully understand adult stress, family pressure, emotional immaturity, or generational pain, they usually make the simplest conclusion possible. Happens. If I am being treated this way, it must mean something is wrong with me. That conclusion can follow a person for decades later in life. They may become the adult who apologizes too quickly. Happens. Even when they did nothing wrong, the adult who feels guilty for resting. The adult who cannot say no without feeling selfish. The adult who panics when someone's tone changes. Happens. The adult who works too hard, gives too much, smiles too often, and quietly believes that being easy to love means never becoming a burden. From the outside, this may look like kindness. Happens. Discipline or emotional maturity. But underneath, it is often fear wearing a socially acceptable mask. It is the old child inside still trying to earn safety, still trying to prove. Happens. Please do not leave. Please do not be disappointed. Please keep loving me. I can be better. And this is why self-hatred can feel so powerful. It is not only a thought, it is an old survival strategy. Happens. Somewhere inside, the mind believes that if it punishes you first, maybe other people will not have to. If it criticizes every flaw, maybe you can fix yourself before someone rejects you. Happens. If it keeps you perfect, useful, and agreeable, maybe you will finally be safe. But the tragedy is that this strategy never actually gives you peace. It only teaches you to live like your worth is always on trial. Happens. Every mistake becomes evidence. Every silence becomes a threat. Every disappointed face becomes a verdict. And no matter how much you achieve, the relief never lasts because the question underneath never changes. Happens. Am I enough now? Healing begins when you realize that this question was never fair. You were not supposed to earn the right to be treated with basic tenderness. You were not supposed to become flawless before you were allowed to feel safe. Happens. A child should not have to perform for love, and the adult you are now should not have to keep living by rules that were built around fear. You can still grow. You can still take responsibility. Happens. You can still improve your behavior, apologize when needed, and become wiser with time. But growth is not the same as proving you deserve to exist. Improvement is not the same as begging for love. Happens. You are allowed to become better without treating your current self like something shameful. Because your worth was never supposed to depend on being perfect, useful, quiet, or easy. Happens. You were not born as a project that had to be fixed before it could be loved. You were a human being first, and the part of you that still believes love must be earned may not need more punishment. Happens. It may need the one thing it was waiting for all along. The feeling that it is safe to be imperfect and still belong. Happens. And once you understand that a child can grow up believing love must be earned, the next layer becomes easier to see. The problem is not only that you judge yourself too harshly. Happens. The problem is that inside your mind, you may be trying to live as 3 different versions of yourself at the same time. The first version is your actual self. This is who you are right now. Happens. Not the perfect version, not the polished version, just the real one. The version that gets tired, makes mistakes, feels jealous sometimes, procrastinates sometimes, says the wrong thing sometimes. Happens, and needs rest like every other human being. Your actual self is not bad, it is simply human. The second version is your ideal self. This is the person you deeply want to become. Happens. Maybe this version is more confident, more disciplined, more successful, more emotionally stable, more respected, more capable of handling life. The ideal self is not necessarily harmful. Happens. In many ways, it gives you direction. It helps you grow. It gives your life a sense of movement. But even this version can become painful if you start believing that you are worthless until you reach it. Happens. Then there is the third version, and this is often the most exhausting one. Your ought self. This is not just who you want to become. This is who you believe you must become in order to be accepted. Happens. The ought self is the version of you that never disappoints anyone, always smiles, always performs well, always replies quickly, always helps, always stays calm, always knows what to say. Happens. Always carries other people's emotions without becoming heavy. This is the version that whispers, if you stop being useful, people will leave. If you say no, they will think you are selfish. Happens. If you show weakness, they will lose respect for you. And this is where the real pressure begins, because your actual self may be exhausted, but your ought self tells you to keep going. Happens. Your actual self may want to say, I can do this today, but your ought self forces a smile and says, of course I can help. Your actual self may need comfort, but your ought self says, happens. Do not need too much. Do not become a burden. Your actual self may feel angry, hurt, or overwhelmed, but your ought self pushes those feelings down because it believes love depends on being easy to deal with. Happens. So instead of living freely, you start performing. You perform kindness, you perform patience, you perform strength, you perform being okay, and because everyone around you sees the performance. Happens. They may think you are calm, generous, and emotionally mature, but inside you are not calm, you are divided. One part of you is trying to survive the day. One part of you is trying to become better. Happens. And one part of you is terrified that if you ever stop being perfect, you will no longer be loved. That inner split is what makes self-hatred feel so intense. You are not only upset because you made a mistake. Happens. You are upset because the mistake proves, at least in your mind, that you failed to become the version of yourself you believe you are required to be. A small error becomes more than an error. Happens. It becomes evidence that your actual self is unacceptable. A moment of tiredness becomes proof that you are weak. A boundary becomes proof that you are selfish. A normal human emotion becomes proof that you are too much. Happens. But here is the truth. The gap between your actual self and your ideal self can create motivation. The gap between your actual self and your ought self often creates shame. Motivation says, happens. I want to grow. Shame says I am not allowed to be loved like this. Motivation gives you energy. Shame drains it. Motivation moves you forward. Shame makes you hide. And if you have spent years obeying your ought self, happens. You may not even know what you truly want anymore. You may only know what keeps people from being disappointed. You may not know what rest feels like without guilt. You may not know how to say no without panic. Happens. You may not know how to make a mistake without turning it into a personal trial. Healing does not mean destroying your ideal self. It is good to have dreams. It is good to want to grow. Happens. But healing does mean questioning your ought self. Who told you that you must always be cheerful? Who taught you that needing help makes you weak? Who made you believe that disappointing someone is the same as being unworthy? Happens. And most importantly, are those rules actually true, or have you simply repeated them for so long that they feel like truth? You do not have to abandon growth to accept yourself. Happens. You do not have to become careless to stop living under pressure. You can improve without hating the person you are now. You can become stronger without treating your tiredness like a crime. Happens. You can become kinder without turning yourself into a tool for everyone else's comfort. The goal is not to erase your actual self and replace it with a flawless version. Happens. The goal is to let your actual self breathe while your ideal self gives you direction, and your ought self loses the power to control your worth, because you were never meant to earn love by performing perfection. Happens. You were meant to grow from a place of safety, not from the fear of being rejected. And maybe the moment you stop asking, who must I become so people will accept me, is the moment you can finally begin asking. Happens. Who am I allowed to become when I no longer hate who I am? Happens. And once you begin asking who you are allowed to become without hating who you are, the next step is not to force yourself to suddenly feel love. That is where many people get stuck. Happens. They hear advice like just love yourself, and it sounds beautiful for a second, but then it feels impossible. Because if you have spent years speaking to yourself with criticism, happens, shame and pressure, you cannot simply flip a switch and feel warm toward yourself overnight. So maybe the goal is not to start with self-love. Maybe the goal is to start with fairness. Happens. Because the real problem is not always that you do not love yourself enough. Sometimes the deeper problem is that you use two completely different standards when someone else makes a mistake. Happens. You look for context, you ask what they were going through, you remember that they are human. But when you make a mistake, you skip all of that and go straight to punishment. When someone else is tired, happens, you tell them to rest. But when you are tired, you accuse yourself of being lazy. When someone else needs reassurance, you comfort them. But when you need reassurance, you call yourself needy. Happens. That double standard is where self-hatred survives. So the first practical step is simple but powerful. Speak to yourself like you would speak to someone you genuinely care about. Happens. Not with fake positivity, not with empty motivational lines, just with basic human decency. If a close friend made the same mistake you made, would you tell them they are useless? Happens. Would you tell them they ruin everything? Would you tell them they do not deserve patience until they become perfect? Of course not. You would probably say, that was hard, you made a mistake. Happens. But it does not define you. Let understand what happened and fix what can be fixed. That is the voice you have to practice borrowing for yourself. At first, it may feel unnatural. Happens. Your mind may reject it. It may say, but I do not deserve that kind of kindness. But you do not need to believe it fully at the beginning. You only need to stop making cruelty your automatic language. Happens. Every time you replace, I am terrible with I am struggling right now, you create a little more space. Every time you replace, I always ruin things with I made one mistake and I can repair it. Happens. You weaken the old pattern. You are not pretending everything is fine. You are simply refusing to turn pain into identity. The second step is learning how to receive good things without pushing them away. Happens. People who are hard on themselves often have a strange relationship with compliments. When someone says you did well, they immediately shrink it. They say it was nothing or I just got lucky. Happens. Or anyone could have done that. On the surface, it looks humble. But deep down, it teaches the brain that positive information about you is not allowed to stay. So the next time someone compliments your work, happens, your kindness, your appearance, or your effort, try something very small. Pause, look at them, and say thank you. Then stop talking for a few seconds. Do not explain it away. Happens. Do not make yourself smaller. Let the compliment exist in the room. Let your nervous system feel the discomfort of being seen without immediately running away from it. This is not arrogance. Happens. This is practice. You are teaching your brain that recognition is not dangerous. The third step is to change the way you see rest and self-care. If you grew up believing your worth depends on being useful, happens, then resting can feel like guilt. Saying no can feel like selfishness. Taking time for yourself can feel like betrayal. But your energy is not infinite. Your patience, focus, kindness happens. And emotional strength all come from a system that needs recovery. A phone cannot charge another phone when its own battery is at 1%. A person cannot keep giving from an empty nervous system without eventually breaking down. Happens. Rest is not selfish. It is maintenance. Care is not weakness. It is what allows you to keep showing up without becoming resentful, numb, or exhausted. When you eat properly, sleep enough. Happens. Step away from pressure, protect your boundaries, or give yourself a quiet moment. You are not abandoning other people. You are keeping yourself capable of loving them honestly. Happens. Healing from self-hatred is not about becoming obsessed with yourself. It is about ending the unfairness. It is about no longer treating yourself as the one person in the room who must earn tenderness through perfection. Happens. You can still grow, you can still be responsible, you can still apologize, improve, and become wiser. But you do not have to hate yourself into becoming better. Because hatred may create pressure. Happens, but it does not create peace. Shame may force performance, but it does not create real growth. The kind of growth that lasts usually begins when you feel safe enough to be honest. Happens. Honest about your flaws. Honest about your needs. Honest about the fact that you are human too. And maybe that is the real cure. Not forcing yourself to love every part of yourself immediately. Happens, but choosing to stop using a standard on yourself that you would never use on someone you love. Speak to yourself with the same fairness. Receive kindness without rejecting it. Happens. Rest before your body has to collapse to get your attention. And little by little, the voice inside your mind can become less like a judge and more like a friend.